Hey, welcome to another episode of AWANI Review, and I'm really excited today to be joined by Choo. He is the CEO and founder of Ammobox Studios. Now, Ammobox is a local gaming development company. In fact, it is the first Malaysian company to launch a first shooter multiplayer PC game, and I'll let him talk to you more about it. First of all, thank you so much, Jeremy, for having me at your office. It's great to be here.
Thank you for joining us in this afternoon. Talking to us. It's always amazing to have a bit of an exposure. So I'm happy to answer your questions and talk a bit about our studio and our games as well.
Yeah, well, before we dive into the games part, maybe we can talk a bit about the history of the company. Ammobox was founded by yourself in 2008. It's been quite a journey, I understand. Talk to us a bit more about that.
So Ammobox Studios has, it's, like you said, it's been around since 2008. We were first created as when we were first formed because we applied for a Technopreneur Pre-Seed grant back then. MDEC did a great job in stirring up games development, animation, and content industry. Back then we were a recipient of a Technopreneur Pre-Seed grant, and part of the condition is that we need to form a company. And here we are. 14 years down the road. So back then we were formed on a purpose of creating IPs, right? We're very much into building IPs because I was a gamer as a child, and I like building mods as well. Mods basically means modification of games, where you build content for games that are not from the primary developer. So I like building games, and I couldn't find a studio to join. I couldn't find a studio to join that and to work on IP, the kind of IPs that I like, right? So we basically, let's form a studio, and let's just build something awesome. And from then on, we continue to work on stuff, and eventually we ended up doing different types of things, from mobile to PC, console ports, and a lot of different other service works as well.
And your focus is mainly in PC games, correct?
Yes, correct. So after being in delving in a bit of other different fields, we ended up finding our niche in building high quality premium PC games. Since the last 10 years, there has been a lot of shift in the ecosystem. There was a mobile game gold rush, back then in the early 2010s. But we didn't participate in the whole thing, so we just kind of stick to building PC games. Right now, I think it's shifting back to PC games because mobile games is getting very, very saturated, especially by the big players, and there's a lot more shift to indie developments, indie boutique make games with a different experience because people are seeing so much of the similar games. So I think there's definitely a shift there to back to PC console.
All right, that's very interesting, and how you stayed focused on PC games despite that trend that we saw in mobile gaming. Talk to us behind that decision.
So I think it's a lot more on our interest level, and I wouldn't say that we do this part of a strategic decision. It's more like this is what we're good at, and we already focused so much into it. I believe that the PC and consoles is always there. I mean, we had a lot of people coming to us and say that PC is dead. They're saying that PC sales is down, mobile games will take over in future. Everybody is going to play only mobile games. But those are very, very superlative arguments, and this is the only one. I think there's always trends in any industry. But beneath all these trends and all these, certain things are kind of, I don't know if the correct term is timeless. PC games is always going to be there, console games is always going to be there because the experience is fundamentally different from mobile games. People will not say, I'm going to stop playing PC games because I play mobile games now, right? People are going to just play multiple games, and we believe in it because a lot of us are PC gamers as well. We are the consumers as well, and we know that the industry is still there. So we are like, we'll just stick to it and learn more about it.
And that certainly has paid off. Let's talk about your flagship game, which is Eximius, and it has done really well. And it is in fact probably your pride and joy, if I would say it. Talk to us that idea behind it and how much it has grown since you developed the game.
Quite unorthodox, our development journey, because back then, remember when I told you we applied for a grant, Technopreneur Pre-Seed, it was actually for a game that's a hybrid of first-person shooter and real-time strategy, which is a unique combination. It's a cross-genre game. We pitched for that back in 2010. We built a prototype. The prototype was completed. We submitted everything, but we realized that the tech may not be ready for that. The PCs may not be powerful, at least for our skill level, not for a big company. That we are probably not ready for it. So we kind of left it there in the back burner. But around 2006, 2007, we take it out of back burner, we continue building it. And I think it's a very interesting niche experience that have. So we like to build the kind of games where players cannot find a replacement titles. There are a lot of games out there that have quote unquote this annual release, right? You have the same titles getting released again and again, but there are certain players who play some games. The experience is so unique, right? You cannot find a replacement to it, and you play it really, really long time. We know this from mods from older games like Renegade, and people have been playing it for a really long time because there's just no other titles like it. So we want to create that kind of experience.
Now,
right?
you mentioned something about the market being saturated, right? And let's talk about even PC games, and how do you keep that interest towards a game and to keep that community alive and to keep that interest so that people grow with the game over time?
So I wouldn't say that we're doing anything special or different in that perspective. The most important thing about building games that is different 10 years ago is how important community is today. Today, there's a lot of disposals, tools at your disposal when it comes to building a community, like Discord. You have like your Steam community. So there's a lot more focus that needs to be in building the community today than what it is back then. So having a community is very important for a few reasons. Number one, you understand what the community want, and number two, it's just this whole sense of ownership that the community has. Is that, hey, I'm talking to developers, I'm able to tell them what we want, I'm able to developers are always there to listen to us about hey, this thing doesn't work, or we're not happy with this, we're not happy with that, and they want to be part of the conversation on where the games are evolving, right? And that is very important and very crucial in building community. Like Eximius is a very esports driven title. We create a very competitive community. We have been running tournaments since 2018, 2019. Right. And some of the players that we run tournaments for, they are still from 2018, 2019, they're still coming back and they're participating in these tournaments that we play, because that's the key. You need to create a very sticky community that people stay and say that we want to be part of this. We want to be part of how these games evolve.
Yeah, stickiness, of course, is that important point. Yep. So Eximius has been around for how many years has it been?
We released it in early access in 2019. So early access is a stage where the game is not complete, but it's out. People can buy it, people can play it, but it's not done. It's part of the roadmap. It's like a very new thing in games in the last 7 or 8 years. So it has been early access since 2018, but it's only fully launched in 2021.
Okay. What would you say have been the biggest challenge in pushing out this game?
I think the technological barrier is one of the things. And of course, part of the technological barrier is a talent pool as well, because you need talent pool that has that, has that tech. So I was, down there in the trenches working with these people, and it's very hard to find talent that has built something like this before, because no one has built like a full-fledged, multiplayer games as a service kind of game back then, right? So I think talent and technology is one of the major ones. The other one would be funding. Right. To get external funders, to get publishers to have confidence in your product, especially you are the first time builder of product, and also you come from a region that is predominantly an outsourced region, then it's very tricky to attract that kind of confidence. So it's definitely talent and capital.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about talent first, right? If you look at Malaysia has been, when we talk about the gaming sector, we have been predominantly known as, like you said, outsourced for foreign companies, foreign games developer. How does that impact the growth of gaming development in Malaysia, having that kind of community or ecosystem? How does it impact our local talents, do you think?
Yeah, so that's another very interesting discussion about ecosystem. So we definitely come from a very outsource heavy country. We have a lot of really, really big and successful outsource studios that's doing great AAA products, right? But we ourselves as a country hasn't built something of that level. And I think a lot of the technology is locked behind the owners of the IP. They basically hand over outsource work. So we have done some outsource work as well. So a lot of outsource work is just basically them telling you exactly what to do. But of course, I think as a country, we're moving up the value chain. A lot of these outsource studios are now pivoting to making their own IP. But it's not easy, because I've always said that if you work on an IP that's several $billion, and then are you able to build anything as close to that? So the technology transfer is slowly happening. I think we're getting there, but one of the major issues I see is that because a lot of the true ownership of the IP, you are still building for someone else. You're not building you're not building value here, you see.
So is that why you're staying true to what you're doing, which is to develop your own IPs?
Yeah, that's always been our goal lah. So of
Okay.
course, servicing is a very good predictable revenue. We're growing a lot in co-development as well. So I mean, Ammobox as a studio is definitely very focused on building IP, but we're also going to co-development now. So our definition of what co-development is very loosely defined. It's one of the service thing that is like, hey, I do co-development. So I will define co-development as when we work on a project that we are actually building more than 50% of it. Like we're being given the responsibility to build that IP, and it's more than 50% of the whole resource we're actually building it, then I would consider that co-development. So we're definitely into servicing as well, but still at the end of the day, we want to build great IPs, we want to build great products, and be the owners of this this IP.
Now, speaking about having a lot of foreign studios or outsourcing to foreign studios, how does that impact then talent acquisition, getting the right people to work in more independent companies such as yours?
Yeah, so I think there's, I would say
Is
that
there a need to level the playing field?
yeah, there's like good and bad, so there's pro and cons for all these kind of things. Definitely it increases the whole quality of the whole ecosystem generally, right? Definitely our first choice is that if a lot of these IPs are being built here, it's way better for the talent pool. But the second choice we have is that, hey, as long as there are participants in that big IP, there's some kind of knowledge transfer, technology transfer. So if you ask me how does it affect, is that a lot of this outsourced work actually improves the ecosystem quality, but at the same time it's also very, very competitive for us, because a lot of outsourced people, they come here because, well, margin is better, right? Definitely, and because of that, they want to keep the margin that way. So, you will. It's a bit hard to move up the value chain.
Yeah.
But I don't want
you
to
say things are changing now. You're seeing that Malaysia is slowly moving up the value chain. What do you think is that catalyst for that to happen? And what are the changes that you're seeing right now?
I'm seeing a lot more outsourced studios definitely getting into building their own IPs. So that is definitely happening, because they are like, hey, we've been building IPs for other people, right? But we also want to build our own. Yeah.
But funding is the biggest challenge.
Yes, but a lot of these studios, they probably accrued a lot of resources. They have been very successful pulling in a lot of revenues. So I think they definitely don't have issues on the funding side lah. But for smaller studios like us, it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, well, securing funding, especially for younger game studios, can be a challenge, because I think it's quite hit-driven. The nature of the gaming industry is quite similar to film industry. How did Ammobox navigate this challenge? How did you overcome this problem of funding?
Okay, so we never actually land a very big publishing deal so far, but we are VC invested. So we have been invested by one of a VC called Global Top Round, and also we have been invested by two VCs. One of them exited already. So we've went down the route of getting funded by VC, and also they help us to raise funds. They help us talk to their partners to actually bring in resources to help building the game. And I also think that MDEC did a very good job in like building the ecosystem and providing the funds. Sometimes it's partially, like they want to see that you have some skin in the game.
Right.
So some of the bigger funds are actually partial. So like the one we get is like basically partial. It's like they want to see that you are able to pull in some of the resources yourself, and I think that's fair. So we kind of need to pull together all these pieces, right, to have enough resources to like finish the game. The first one. So the second one, we're a bit better off that we can actually fund it ourselves. So back then it was like a bit from VC, a bit from service work. Like we do service work to fund our IP, and then also some of it from government assistance. So the mixture of a little bit of here and there.
So how is it for you as a game developer, as well as a CEO of a company, looking at both sides, finding money and then developing games, trying to make sure that this goes to market? How has that experience been for you over the years?
Oh, it's very challenging, because we early on, I would say that maybe in the first 8-9 years of me being part of this company, I'm predominantly a developer. I go in and I build the games together with the team. I think I spend like more than 90% of my time doing development work. But I think that's slowly shifting. As the company is growing, we just have a very big growth last year. We went from like 12 people to like 45 people this year.
Yeah.
As the company is growing, I definitely need to spend more time, managing it, looking through the future of the company, making sure that we're working on relevant stuff, making sure that we can keep up to the progress and the growth, and making sure that our environment is competitive, our people is getting paid competitive enough, people stay, retention and all this kind of thing. It's really, really important. So I'm definitely shifting a lot into management. It's a lot of challenge, for me personally.
Okay.
But we also get very good, a lot of very good senior management joining us in the last 1 year that helped me to take some of this load off.
So amidst all of that, how do you still find that joy or inspiration to be, because you're a game developer at heart, right? How do you balance that?
I always believe that great companies, like I always look up to Epic Games, the owner of Unreal Engine, that the CEO is a developer himself. I always think that some of the best game dev company, right, is because the founders, I don't know if I'm going to step on a little bit other toes talking about this, but some of the founders are always developers first. And I think that's very important because you understand the challenge of development, you understand consumer perspective, you understand how your game reaches to the people. You're not just a number guy, you're not just a management guy. And I think that's very important to keep one feet in both management and also in development, because that's what allows you to build a really strong team.
Okay.
I think that's very important.
I'm curious to know, what would you describe as success? Of course, Eximius is your baby, your product, which has done really well. Do you think it has reached the level of success that you want? And what for you is that benchmark?
So I think Eximius has reached a certain level where I didn't imagine it to be, but also I wouldn't consider it like a really, really like unicorn success, or even like, it hit the ROI that we really wanted it to be. A picture of success will be a few things. So I'm just going to start with I think Eximius has done quite good in the sense that our IP has been licensed by another third party. He has also reached enough players for people to have their own community, for people to talk about. There are also people who are hosting their own tournaments because they like the game so much, So I think that itself kind of pick it out of the way that it is reached a certain traction. But I do see it as a very, very big success if it's a very loose term, it's culturally really relevant. Like we talk about things like, hey, StarCraft, Korea, World of Warcraft, it's culturally really relevant. So I want to make an IP to the point where it is culturally relevant. And I think that can only happen if your IP symbolizes something. Okay. Like StarCraft is always symbolizes esports, competitiveness, World of Warcraft has always symbolizes the idea of like camaraderie, Fortnite has symbolizes the idea of like what's hip and trendy, that you have to reach that level of cultural relevancy, right? That would be like, I've made something that's impactful, to the human civilization, So that's always been my goal.
So it's not just longevity, it's not just ROI.
Yeah, it's definitely not just ROI and longevity. I mean, you need to keep the lights on, that's for sure. Keep the lights on, keep the people growing, But beneath all that, right, the greater purpose is that we want to make something that's culturally significant. But it's very loosely defined, because sometimes we live in bubbles where, I mean, there may still be people who don't know what Star Trek is, but it's definitely culturally relevant,
Okay, well, I'm not a gamer, but I know those games I
Correct,
just mentioned, right? So I know you're developing your second flagship game. Can you talk to us a bit about that? And maybe you could share with us some of the key lessons you have learned developing Eximius, and how are you taking some of those notes to be implemented in the second one?
So our next flagship is not a sequel to Eximius. So Eximius is a very competitive, very PvP, we call it player versus player product. Our next product is, our next flagship is going to be very collaborative, a PvE game. It's a looter shooter. It's not going to be a competitive shooter. We've learned a lot primarily on the tech. It's very hard to give you a one-liner what we learned in the tech. But one thing we've learned is the importance of pre-production, because back then when we were doing Eximius, it was drawn out over like a decade, right? Like I said, so we never really have a very fixed pre-production where we sit down together and we are like, the sky is the limit, just build anything. Call it the blue sky period, just build anything, and then we lock it down and say that, okay, we've got the hook ready, you know what you want, and then we go into production. When we built Eximius, it was just us throwing bits and pieces of it together until it is done, it's not a very wise thing to do, but I think we have learned through better production processes, we have learned through better technology, and we've also learned to, I think we've learned to pitch the project better, understanding the processes, because our VC has only joined us after we launched Eximius, right? And they're helping us a lot on the business development area. So we've also learned to pitch the product better, learning how to structure, how do you actually package this and show it to stakeholders that say that, okay, here's a product that you want to fund, here's a product that's going to be sellable, work with us on this, how to create that pitch. I think those are all the aspects that we've learned better.
You mentioned hook, right, which is very important, especially in games. And I do wonder for you, when do you decide, like, okay, we have found a hook and this is what we're going to run with?
Right. So I think that's a very subjective thing, but most important fundamentally as gamers, right, you look at it and then you can feel the kind of like excitement, like this is going to be exciting. So the hook can be many things. It can be a very exciting atmosphere. It can be like a certain mechanics that has a lot of visual excitement that you look at it, it's like damn cool. It's like Spider-Man, you just swing around, it's like, hey, this is damn fun. It works like a dream, So I think games, right, it's a very complex media because you can look at it, you can play it, right? It's a different thing, And like driving, it's like a motor skill, right? You could forget to drive for 8 years and then you go back to, you're like, I catch it. Because there's this connection to the car as if the car is another appendage to you. Like games, right? If the gamers, right, look at the avatar, they can feel the avatar and they can be part of it and experience the excitement through the game, right? Then I think you have achieved your hook already. So I think it has to be immersive. It has to be able to connect with the design that you want to show.
And for this second game, at what point do you think that, okay, I found a hook, I think it's ready, and I'm confident that this is going to happen? So when is that? So
to find a hook, right? So the designers have like a design goals. We call it design goal. That okay, we want the consumer to feel this, this, and this.
Okay.
If you play it as a consumer and you feel that, right? I think we have achieved it. But of course, it has to be fun, lah. But because we as designers, we look at it and we're like, I want them to feel this and this and this, and we have to fulfill that assumption that when you feel this and this and this, it's actually nice, right? So we have to get that, and we have to checkbox the assumption that says when you have all this, right, it's actually nice. Sometimes you may have all this, but it's actually not nice. You have to go back to the drawing board.
Okay.
So there's no choice. It's like if you are making a dish, right, you put chocolate in ramen, you think it's nice, and then it comes out not nice. I'm sorry, you gotta go back to the drawing.
Have you had any experience where you went to market with that product and realized, hey, this doesn't work. I need to go back to the drawing board.
I think Eximius, we went through a lot of situations like that. Because Eximius' journey is a little bit different. We never went through like a full pre-production. There was some form of pre-production, but when we go into early access, right, the whole idea was to find out what doesn't work. But doing it in early access is a bit dangerous because you kind of lose some players every time you make a mistake like that. But you are just hoping that the ocean is big enough. That's going to be new features, and then you're going to fix your mistake along the way. I think in Eximius there's a lot of small, medium-sized things, but hopefully not the large things. But the large vision worked. It's just that a lot of things we realize that, hey, this doesn't really work. We gotta cut it. And I think that's part of parcel of being a game designer is to figure out whether your assumptions are correct or not, and if it's not, how do you pivot away? Do you have to go back to the drawing board, or the entire fundamentals of assumption is wrong, you have to scrap it? I mean, we have also built some IPs that we never debut.
Okay.
And 3 months down the road, we have everyone tried it, and then we are like, nah, this doesn't cut it. It's not fun. And then we look at each other, we're like, was that fun? Not really, right? And then we're like, we scrap it. So sometimes it has to be done, That's why games get cancelled sometimes.
Yeah. And I think a lot have to do with just putting aside that ego, right? Because sometimes we have spent so much time into it, and then to have people telling you, this doesn't work. How do you navigate that?
I believe in, I don't know who made this quote, like say you got to be the harshest critic of your own work. I forgot who made that. Maybe I'll figure out from a quote that sometimes people say you have to be the harshest critic of your work. Don't get married to your ideas. I mean, to a certain extent, you have to be excited with your ideas. Otherwise, you can't see it through, because any idea is going to have hundreds of obstacles, right? But you have to be the harshest critic of your work, because there's someone else who is going to be playing it and won't tell you how bad it is, right? So you're going to be a harsh critic of your work, and sometimes we bounce ideas with each other, being completely honest that this doesn't work. Because when you design a game, right, there's always this spectrum of this grandeur, emerging vision versus safe ideas.
Yep.
Like hundreds of games have done this. And you ask yourself, right, where in this spectrum do I want to land into? So certain areas you want to be a bit more safe, certain areas you want to be a bit more emerging. So you pick and choose your battle. I've always believed that you don't gamble everything at the most grand ideas lah. Because when you design a game, there are many areas that you have to design. Some areas just play it safe, some areas just be a bit more exciting if you're a bit wilder.
Well, that's fantastic advice. Just one final question, Jeremy, before we wrap this up. What would be your next ambition, or what would you hope to achieve in what you're doing at Ammobox?
So I won't say that we have like super any grand ambitions. Like, Ammobox was created for, first and foremost, just one main objective, which I want to create a space, a safe place for people to build games that they're passionate about. And it's all about us being able to build games. Our ambition is definitely to build something that's culturally relevant. My next ambition is obviously able to achieve the kind of resources that's needed to be safe to say that we can build any kind of product that's under the sun, and then that product becomes a reflection of who we are, our ideas and our cultures. But one secondary thing that I want to see from the market is that a lot of games that we see today are made by several countries only. That the ideas, the formation of the ideas are only done by several countries. I won't mention names lah. That everybody else just serve that markets. But I want to see ideas coming from different part of the world, And I think that's slowly shifting, more of those different regions, IPs that are owned by different regions, ideas that are originating from different regions. That's one thing I really want to see down the road. Whether we will be the one executing that or not, it remains to be seen.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Jeremy, for sharing your story, and best of luck with all your plans.
Thank you.